understand the mystery. First take a look at the history. The words we use will give us clues. So join us now in Church Chatter.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Church Chatter podcast, where we unpack a different church word or phrase each week. I'm Sam. I study, I never know how to word it, Christian literacy, church literacy, Christian religious language and culture, religious linguistics. There's a million ways to say it. I'll just say church language. There we go.
Who am I? I'm Dillon. I'm an ELCA Lutheran pastor.
So it's episode 41. Light the candle. I still have this same candle. Usually I go through them faster. This one's burning weird.
It's burning kind of
Not
up
good.
a bit.
Yeah, like it looks like there's a lot left, but there is not. All right. Episode 41. Today, like always, you can see my notes. This one I have a little picture I did on our way home. We were driving home from Maine. And, well, let's just get into it. I'm going to tell everybody quickly. I have perfectionism issues, so does Dillon. They come up in different ways, though. And one way that I calm my nervous system is I draw imperfect pictures in my notebook. So I just draw imperfect pictures. And
Except that they're not very imperfect.
no, some of them I end up liking. But the point is, I do it in something like ink. It can't be erased. If I mess up, I just have to keep going, and it really helps my anxiety that's attached to perfectionism. So anyway, I have notes. Today we are doing an episode on is church political? And it's very timely because, Dillon, tell us about what recently happened.
Well, it's going to be, I think, a week and a half or almost 2 weeks. The IRS, the United States Internal Revenue System, which takes care of all kinds of the collection of taxes and takes care of the tax code in the United States, has overturned or lifted a decades, plural,
From the 50s?
from 1954, an amendment or a rule to the IRS stating that nonprofits, both religious houses of worship and other nonprofits, but specifically houses of worship, can now endorse or oppose political candidates. This is something that in our lifetime, I am 34, you're 35, we grew up where this was not.
And so did our parents.
And so did our parents, correct. Yes, my parents were born in the 60s, in the early 60s. So this was in 1954. This was before their time. And so.
And why did that happen in the 50s? Do you know? I don't mean to put you
So
on the
in
spot.
1954, there was Congress looked at and updated the tax code and passed new tax laws. And there was, in the 1950s and 60s, it was post-World War II. Churches were booming.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of people going to church.
Is that the decade that our church specifically did our education wing?
It was 1956, so
Yes.
it was soon.
If you look at a lot of churches, especially mainline Protestant churches, in the 50s they did so many expansion projects because
the Catholic
they
Church,
were growing.
the Catholic Church,
Catholics, yeah.
the Catholic Church, they were building new parishes.
Yes.
And so in the 1950s and early 60s, religious houses of worship, even in other religions, especially synagogues and other types of things, they were either growing by building new expansive wings and buildings, or they were building whole new churches. And a lot of nonprofits, type of civic organizations and things were very, very much a part of people's lives. So things like the Rotary Club and the Lions Club and the Elks and the Masons and all these different types of things, the Moose, all these different types of nonprofit organizations, people were very involved in. And they saw these things, houses of worship, in the 1950s and 60s. They saw houses of worship and nonprofit things as being what we would call nonpartisan. Not that they weren't necessarily non-political, but they were
We're going to talk about those two words in a minute.
They were nonpartisan in that if they were doing civic good for the community, like the Lions Club or the Rotary, or if they were a nonprofit organization like helping people with food needs and other things, or if they were the church that was promoting and teaching morals and ethics and also helping the poor and other things. Those two places were to build what was known as, and still known as, the common good of society. Civic organizations and religious organizations worked together in a nonpartisan way to build the common good for all people. And so the government, U.S. Senator Lyndon B. Johnson, who would become the President of the United States when JFK was assassinated, he was a U.S. Senator from Texas. He became the Vice President of the United States, Lyndon Johnson, and then when JFK was killed, he became the President. It was called the Johnson Amendment in 1954, when he was still in the Senate, and he said that if these churches in particular and these civic groups were going to do common good actions, it would be best to stick to the separation of church and state and not have them meddle with promoting candidates or a certain political party. So not saying, well, we're only for the Democrats, or we're only for the Republicans, or we're only libertarians. That was not the responsibility of civic organizations and churches. And so the Johnson Amendment from 1954 has stated, I know this is a long-winded answer, has stated that the IRS, if the IRS would see that those two organizations, specifically the church, were going to be meddling in promoting or opposing or trying to sway people with a certain candidate or a certain political party, they would lose their tax-exempt status. Mm-hmm. But as of a week and a half ago to 2 weeks ago...
It was 2 Texas churches and some other religious organization, right?
Yes. A new ruling out of Texas, which is rather...
So just because those 3 groups were told that they can endorse a candidate, does that now mean
it seems,
all 501c3, all
it seems to be now,
it
seems to be now, there's some uncertainty. That's why there's confusion around this, but there's some uncertainty.
As there often is in this administration.
But it does seem like this could be a blanketed, kind of a broad brush.
And you're seeing in the U.S. the Catholic, what's it called? The
U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops.
They have come out and officially said, we will, as Catholics in the U.S., we will not be endorsing candidates. We will not be doing it.
Or endorsing political parties.
Yes. We are ELCA, and they have come out on a national level, right? Mm-hmm. Saying, no, that is not something... even whenever NPR reported on this initially, their polling, which... Do we trust polling? That's a question. But their polling has showed that a majority of denominations do not support this, and they will not be participating in this. So that kind of lays the groundwork. I want to talk about the word politics, political, and the words partisan, and really separate them. And I want to talk about the dangers of churches endorsing political parties or candidates. And then I have some book recommendations, a few that I read and a few that I pulled from your shelf that you don't know yet, but you're going to talk about that I think are very appropriate. And then I want to end by talking about community.
Okay.
That's kind of my plan. Do you have...
I mean, this topic is,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So first, the word politics comes from the Greek word politika, right? And polis... just means city. So politics, to be political, politics just means the affairs of the city or the affairs of the state. That's all it means. And Dillon knows that I have strong opinions about this. When people say, oh, I wish my pastor wouldn't get so political, I have such a low tolerance for those comments, because your church should absolutely be political, because politics is just how we arrange our shared lives. How do we feed people? Who should be feeding people? Who should we feed? I mean, the answer is everybody.
Who
but
should
you-
we house? Who should we clothe?
house? Who should we clothe? These are communal
Who should be able
issues.
to gather together?
Yes. These are political.
Clean water, clean
issues.
air, clean land, appropriate farming practices.
Who can get married?
Who can
can't
get married?
Yes.
Health care. Who is going to provide health care to a community?
And by the way, we link political with our government, but that is not the only political organization that exists. Churches I'm going to get a lot of flack for this. In some ways, they're political organizations, meaning they play a role in how we arrange our shared lives.
Well, there's something called church polity. Polity, polity. Another word for polity is government or governance. And every church has a different way of living out their polity or their governance. The Lutheran Church has a fairly clear cut. We have a constitution, we have bylaws, we have elections.
Wait, can I say something that you're touching on really quick? Because this has to do with the IRS thing. Even a family has a governance,
Sure
right?
they do.
Like in our family, there's certain things that I manage, certain things Dillon manages, certain things we come together and do, right? There's a governing system, no matter how official or unofficial. And the IRS ruling, you know more about the political side of this, but this IRS, I don't even want to call it ruling, but is it an official ruling? I don't even know. This IRS decision, it is an official ruling. So some politician said some version of, a church is just like a family. So for them to endorse, I don't know about all of you, but I don't vote like my family of origin, right? Like, so to say that a church is like a family, so they get to endorse somebody, I don't see many people voting like their families do. It's quite possible our daughters will grow up and they won't vote similarly to Dillon and I.
Well, I think of people
so that's
in
just
our...
a weird thing. Wait, I really want to make this one point.
Mhm.
And you can talk more about this, I know you can, but turning organizations and corporations into individuals in a democracy and a voting system is very dangerous. To think that a family votes the same, to think that, and I'm pretty anti-individualism at this point in my life, but in a democracy that is built on individualism. You can't have a corporation, you can't have a whole church voting the same, endorsing the same party. Do you know what I'm saying?
No, I totally agree. I mean, as a pastor who ministers to all people in my congregation, I try my best. There is people in my congregation who are very liberal.
Mm-hmm.
There are people in my congregation that are very conservative. There are people that are kind of centrist or independent and moderates. And there are also people in my congregation who are kind of apolitical. It's not too much of interest to who they are. They don't vote. So I have people all over the political spectrum. And for me, as their pastor, to tell them what candidate to vote for or what political party to vote for, that is not my job as a pastor.
No.
What my job is to talk about issues and to talk about concerns of the greater society, like Jesus did.
Mm-hmm.
And my job, I just wrote about this, I'll just say this and then we can move on, but my job as a pastor, at least in the Lutheran Church, is to proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ, which is for all people.
Yeah, and can I talk about... Yep.
Hold on. To administer the sacraments, which is baptism and communion, and also to make sure that the church is reaching out to the poor and anyone who is pushed to the margins. Mm-hmm. That's my job.
Yes.
My job is not to tell people who to vote for, but my job is to educate and activate service to others.
Yes.
The first two things, the gospel and the sacraments, those are spiritual things. The second thing is spiritual things that bring us to action in the world.
Yes.
Just so everyone knows this, because some people do and some people don't, I also have a bachelor's of science in political science and legal studies. So this is very near and dear to me.
Right. And that touches on what a community is as well. If a church is similar to a family, Dillon and I have already talked about this. We would love for our daughters to grow up and be of the same political and religious persuasion.
Oh, I'd love
as
a
us.
great little clone.
I would love that.
A cookie cutter.
The chances are pretty slim.
Sure.
Right? They're pretty slim.
And that's a good thing.
And they're still our children.
Mm-hmm.
And they're still invited to every holiday. And you show up anyway.
Right.
You show up anyway. And I think church is the same. As soon as you have an organization that you want to endorse a political party or a specific candidate, you're going to have this division in your church. Now you get to wrestle with things, right? And I want to ground this in the Roman Empire.
Of course.
So let's just talk about John the Baptist and Jesus the Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus of Nazareth was a Jew. John the Baptist was a Jew. John the Baptist was likely a zealot of the zealot party, right? I don't know, there's lowercase zealot. That's another word we should do. I gotta remember that. But he was a zealot who lived in the woods most likely, and zealots were known for being quite radical. So they were both Jews. They both were part of the Jewish community together, so much so that John the Baptist baptized Jesus of Nazareth, right? But Jesus there is one book called The Zealot by Reza Aslan, who he argues that Jesus was a zealot. It's a very good book, but I don't agree, and most people don't agree that he was a zealot. I
believe that he had zealots.
Lowercase z's
that followed him.
Yes.
Simon the Zealot.
Yes.
But that he was a zealot.
They didn't, within the Roman Empire, Jesus of Nazareth was against the Roman Empire. That's very clear. There's no debating that. He was against the Roman Empire. John the Baptist was another Jew against the Roman Empire. Their tactics for how they were against the Roman Empire, very different. Their political stances, very different. The way they engaged with the political party that was the Roman Empire, very different.
Jesus was also against the how do I want to say this? The corrupt politics of the time in the Jewish temple.
Yes.
Under religious law.
Yes.
So it wasn't just civil government that Jesus was against, but politics in the church when they went corrupt.
Yeah. Well, my point
he called
though is
both
that
out.
These two men, they had very different ways, and if it was a democratic system and they could vote for people, which they didn't back then, they might have voted differently, and yet they were still Jews in the same community.
Right.
If we, as church communities, all of a sudden have to endorse a party, there has to be a diversity within a church community. And if you're looking for a church community where you align fully politically and religiously with everybody, that has never been what Christianity is. It's not even what humanity is. It's just not possible. Identity and worldview is so complicated. I would love to have a friend who sees everything the way I do. Dillon might be the closest that comes to that, and even every couple months we find something we disagree.
That's sweet.
We disagree
That's
on.
very sweet.
We are almost the same people and we see things similarly, but it's hard. It's very difficult to find that, and even we have some disagreements on large things.
Real quick, the example that I always use is.
Do you know what I'm saying, though?
Oh, I totally get what you're saying. When it comes to the church community. And going back to the Greek roots of the word politics, and the art of politics, which does not have to be necessarily a skeezy word or a corrupt word, but when one is looking to the community or looking to the city as the politics in the Greek would understand it, the church should be concerned. Because Jesus was, and if you're a Christian, you're following the teachings of Jesus. Jesus was concerned about how people were housed and cared for.
Yes.
He was concerned about health care because he was concerned about healing in the sick. He was concerned.
And
these are political issues, but they're also deeply ethical and moral issues. They are both.
Yes.
And so what we have done in a lot of Western countries, including the United States, is we have said caring for the poor, caring for housing and the sick and the environment and the hungry and all these things, those are political issues. Yes, they are indeed political issues, but they're also issues of morals and ethics, which the church has been talking about for centuries.
Yes.
And so removing those things and only putting them in the political sphere is a danger.
Yes.
And what people are saying a lot of times is, well, if your pastor is talking about people having good equality in housing or good equality in marriage or good equality in being able to access food assistance
Gender
or
roles
housing
and
assistance,
women
all
being
these
able
things,
to have positions of
they're
power.
talking about politics. Yes, sure, okay, yes, they're talking about politics. They're also talking about morals and ethics, which the church is called to speak to.
That's a really good segue.
So your pastor should be talking about issues of morals and ethics that also parallel with political engagement in terms of meaning engagement in the community. That is very, very different
From partisan.
than partisan candidates and partisan politics.
Yes. Can I talk about that word quick?
Yes, but let me just say, partisan candidates and partisan politics tell you how the housing has to be.
Shaking the camera.
I'm sorry, I'm getting very passionate now.
You can tell we're both like chomping at it, like, oh, wait, I want to say something.
It says that housing should be a certain way.
Yes.
That the administration of food and the sick should be a certain way. And what I'm saying is the church is called to talk about how are we going to, not how are we going, we are called to care for these certain things, these certain issues. How we go about that becomes partisan.
Yes. So hold on.
And your pastor shouldn't be telling you how to do that.
Yes. So this is the thesis of this whole episode. Churches can be political. They absolutely can be political and take a stance on certain political issues. Right?
And listen to, hold on,
No,
listen to the whole podcast. People will hear that. They listen to the whole podcast.
Yes, listen to the whole podcast, but this is the whole thing, right? Because this is this podcast, Church Chatter Podcast, is about church language, right? Political means how we arrange our shared lives. It means the arrangements of the city, the arrangement of the state, the arrangement essentially of the community, be it church, be it the nation, whatever, right? But partisan at the root is that part. It means part or faction. Or party, right? So to be partisan, yes, it's political, but partisan specifically means to be allegiant to a party. Here's a third word that really matters. Christ comes from the Greek Christos, which comes from the Hebrew Messiah, and that Messiah word means party of the anointed. So whenever we call Jesus, right, we get baptized. If you've been listening to every episode, you've heard this before. When you get baptized, we are anointed with the cross. Who else gets anointed? Rulers. Roman emperors were anointed into their leadership positions when they became the emperor. Kings, up to this day, in different parts of the world. Pastors, when they were ordained. Bishops, right?
Deacons.
Many leaders, they are anointed with oil, right? Christ, to be a Christian, we are not Jesus-ins, we are Christians, because Christ comes from that word Messiah, which means anointed one. We belong as Christians, I-A-N. It's not Christology. Ology would be the study of Christianity. We are Christians, I-A-N. That means we belong, I'm a word nerd, right?
Wow.
We belong to the party of the anointed. We belong to the Christ party. So if we're going to church, because we are allegiant, shaking your leg.
Sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry.
We are allegiant to the party of Christ, the party of the anointed. That is.
And the teachings that come from that.
And the teachings that come from that. And that doesn't mean that we can't be registered Democrat.
Oh, no,
right?
right.
We also belong to a democracy, but as Christians, what are we first loyal to? Is it our political party or is it the party of the anointed? We have to make a decision. And then let that guide us, right? And there are many persuasions of Christianity. that's complicated. There you go.
Sure.
But my version, both sides are often against it. Both sides often are not aligning with what I have been transformed to see the world as. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
in summary, political, not a bad thing. A quick story. I had a student 2 semesters ago, very wonderful student. He came up, students were talking about politics, and as long as it doesn't get nasty, when they're in like small groups and they finish their work, I let them, whatever. Because I'm not afraid of political conversations. And then at the end, he came up to me. He's like, I just hate those political conversations. And I said, oh, do you? He said, yeah, I'm just really not a political person. I don't vote. I probably never will. And I said, oh, do you have running water in your apartment? Because I know he just moved into an apartment with his girlfriend. I said, do you have running water in your apartment? He said, yeah, why? I said, that's political. You are a political person. You are receiving a political service because you have running water.
If
you have electric that comes to your home, yeah. You are political. You can say, oh, I'm not a political person. What you're saying is, I don't like conflict. And that's valid, and I get it. You are political, whether you vote or not, how you spend your money, where you spend your time, the spaces your body is in, the people you spend your time around, your words that you use, they are all political. You can't be an apolitical person because we are all part of a body.
Yeah.
You can try, but that's not possible. You are not an island, right?
Well,
you're not an island. You are part of humanity. Welcome to the mess.
Politics means, like, if you don't want to use that word, fine. It's still
just communal living.
It's still politics, and it's engagement. Who doesn't want to be? Well, some people don't, but who doesn't want to be engaged with what's going on? So we live in a borough, and boroughs provide sanitation pickup, trash pickup. Sometimes that's through a private third party they partner with, or sometimes the municipality or the borough does it themselves. In our borough, it is subsidized, but the borough still takes care of it through a third-party private person. If you're concerned about your trash and your trash pickup, and you don't like the way that it's going, and you like to engage in that, that's engaging in politics, whether you like it or not. It's at the most basic level. There was a former Speaker of the House in the 1970s and 80s. His name was Tip O'Neill. And Tip O'Neill was, he was an interesting looking character. He had beautiful white hair. He was from Massachusetts. He was a classic New England guy. He was a Democrat. And he was a congressman for years, and then he became the Speaker of the House. And Tip O'Neill was known for always battling with Ronald Reagan, who was the president at the time, and Ronald Reagan was a Republican. And yet, on multiple occasions, Tip O'Neill, this liberal New England, Massachusetts Democrat, and President Ronald Reagan, this kind of Western business-like conservative Hollywood guy, got together, and on many things they came and they made great strides. They were people of very, very different persuasions, but they saw that things needed to be done, and they engaged. Mm-hmm. They engaged. And there needs to be more of that in life, in the world. And yet I have strong opinions that religious organizations, religious houses of worship should be engaged in the political issues of the world, but they should not be in the business of promoting or opposing partisan candidates or parties.
And being loyal to a political
party. And being loyal, saying, well, our church only votes for Democrats, or our church only votes for Republicans, or our church... No, that is a...
It's a problem because those parties shift all the time, and
right.
You could shift with it instead of being grounded.
Right, and... Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not the role of the church.
Yeah, I also just have a lot of questions about how dangerous it could get. I don't want this episode to get too long, but when we start naming organizations as endorsing entities, I feel very strongly about how money gets spent at churches.
Mm-hmm.
that money that is raised, that people put into the giving, we are tax exempt for a reason. And a lot of people who are anti-church and anti-Christianity, first of all, I'm with you. I get it. But a lot of people are like, oh, they shouldn't be tax exempt. If you make all houses of worship not tax exempt tomorrow, a lot of them will close. A lot of people, non-Christians, right? Like just
We'll have
people,
non-access to
they won't have
resources.
coats in the winter. They won't have food for food banks. They won't have houses over their head in the cold months. They won't have
Fuel oil.
I mean, yeah,
groceries.
Yeah, people contact many pastors asking, like, I can't pay my heating bill, and churches help them when the government can't, right? People who work in the government have, I know, reached out to Dillon, and we know other pastors this happens to, saying, hey, our government funds are out, and we have people who need X, Y, or Z. Can your church help, right? So if you think churches aren't working, especially these like small, like 100 people in their congregation, right? These smaller churches aren't working in the background helping a lot of people, and not just members of their churches, people of different and no religion at all. People. Our system will crumble without that.
Yeah,
so we need that tax exempt, right? It matters.
So I sit on the board of COAD, it's called, which is the Schuylkill County kind of disaster relief.
Is that a board?
Yeah,
Or is
it's a board. No, it's a board. And what they do is it's a government board that works with nonprofits such as churches and other civic organizations to, when, just as Samantha said, when the government runs out of money, what do? They come looking to houses of worship to be able to help. Volunteer organizations that have been able to, that can help. And so there is Democrats on that board, there is Republicans on that board, there are kind of middle of the road independents on that board. And I don't really care about people's political affiliation who are sitting on that board. I want to come together and work to see, and everyone else does on that board too, to see when natural disasters come, when floods come, when hurricanes come, when there are trees down, when there's things like that, how can we work to help people and their families become safe again and become restored? And as a Christian and as a pastor, the death and resurrection story, someone has just had a death in their life, maybe not a physical death, but they've lost their home or something like that. And my job is to help bring them to resurrection. And so I don't care if that's a Democrat doing it, a Republican doing it, an independent doing it. I just want to see people be restored. And that is engaging in a political government system, but that's not partisan.
Yes, and oftentimes, I know this is going to sound all like, oh, it must be like a utopia, but it's not. Dillon and I are related to, we know many people who are not of our political persuasion. When you talk to them long enough, you realize we all want the same thing, with very few exceptions. We want people who are hungry to be fed. We want children to be cared for. We want all of these things. It's just how we do it, how we think it should be done is often different. Where we think the resources should come from are very different. But when you get 10 or 15 of those people in one group, like on this board you're talking about, what ends up happening is compromise. You end up having to compromise how it gets done, and everybody's got to give a little. Right. And then but what we want done is often, with few exceptions, right? But what we want done is usually the same thing.
Right. And it's for the common good.
Yes.
It's for the common good.
Yes. I want to talk about Christian nationalism for a moment.
Oh, God. Okay.
Because do you think it's related?
Oh, obviously absolutely related, right? I do. Absolutely I do.
I don't really know what I want to say about Christian nationalism, except that we have except that it's bad. And we have some book recommendations. That's a whole other episode. You're shaking the screen.
Sorry. Any type of strict nationalism is bad.
It can lead somewhere very dangerous. So we have some book recommendations. The first one I have, I'll show you some books, but the first one I have is on my Kindle, and I don't have it downloaded because I read it a while ago. But April, I never know how to say her Joy, I think is her last name, but it's called Star Spangled Jesus. And if you're not following her on Instagram and social media, go for it. She has long red hair. She grew up being like conditioned by her church and her family to be a Christian nationalist. And her There's many of them out there if you're in the evangelical world like I am, even though I was not raised evangelical. That's a whole other episode too. But long story short, this Christianity taking over the government thing, it didn't just happen. People have been working for a long time to get political power. It's no coincidence that the communities that have been told specifically they can endorse a specific type of candidate, right? There's no coincidence there. Christianity, a certain expression of Christianity is trying to take over the government, and it has been being planned strategically for many decades. And April grew up in this to be told that, like, this is what we're going to do, and now it's happening. And she has left that Christian expression, that denomination. But so anyway, Star Spangled Jesus, that's a good one. This one is not entirely about specifically only Christian nationalism, but it does touch on how evangelical Christianity has been, they're part of this Christian nationalism and the political right. So this one is called The Ex-Evangelicals, Loving, Living, and Leaving the White Evangelical Church.
Right.
And it's also about her childhood in the church and the damage.
Keep sharing this. I have to leave the screen because I have another one that I want to give you. So you'll see my yellow chair.
Another one is called Christians Against Christianity. Dillon and I both read this. The subtitle is How Right-Wing Evangelicals Are Destroying Our Nation and Our Faith. This is another good one. This one, which doesn't have the dust jacket anymore, The Flag and the Cross. Do you want?
The Flag and the Cross is by two authors, and they kind of correlate back and forth with each other, and it has to do with really focusing on, as a Christian, what are we focused on? Are we focused on the cross and the teachings, life and teachings of Jesus, or are we focused on nationalism, which only looks at the flag? It's an excellent book. It's not very long. It has a lot of good data, good information in it.
The subtitle is White Christian Nationalism and the Threat to American Democracy.
That's excellent.
And then the last one is called Red State Christians: Understanding the Voters Who Elected Donald Trump.
That one is very, very good. It sounds a bit partisan. It's not. It is also written by an ELCA Lutheran pastor. She does a great job.
Angela Denker.
Yep. And it was, I think it was 2016 it came out.
Yeah. Being partisan somewhat in your own life, like, I mean, we already said this. It's okay to be registered a Democrat.
Oh, sure. Sure it is. Sure
it's
it is.
It's even okay to read partisan books. We're talking about a church entity having their loyalty be to the Republican Party or the Democratic Party.
Everyone has
and not the party of the anointed.
Everyone has a slight bent to their own political persuasion. Some people are in the middle. Some people are on both sides of the aisle. That's all right. But all we're saying, specifically me, is that your church community, specifically your pastor, should not be telling you who to vote for or what political party to vote for.
Yes, they should be baptizing you and anointing you into the party of Christ.
And sharing the meal of Christ. They should be baptizing and administering communion. They should be preaching the gospel and sharing the teachings of Jesus. And they should be helping those who are poor and on the margins. That's the church's responsibility to do in community.
Yes, and I've been wrestling a lot. So I said I wanted to end by talking about community, and I really want to. And I know I've said this already on this podcast, but I've been thinking so much recently because I read it a few months ago and I can't stop thinking about it. The price we pay to be part of community or relationship is annoyance, is disagreement. Right? But we show up anyway. When your spouse or your children annoy you, because we're humans and it happens, you wake up and you show up anyway. And you feed your kids anyway. And you say, I love you anyway. When that committee at church is like, oh, those two people, the way we communicate is very different. You show up anyway. And you try to see where they're coming from anyway. That's the point. I've been really struggling recently with okay, if I don't, like, what is Christianity then if we can't find something in common? And I think all it is we have found something in the Christian story compelling.
Mhm.
So we keep showing up. Now, what I find compelling in this story that's been going on for many thousands of years is very different from what other people find compelling about the story, but we all find something about the story, whether it's in the Bible or in the history of it all. I get fed by thinking about Jesus and the Roman Empire and their relationship, a murderous relationship because they ended up killing him.
Right.
Some people are fed by the practices, some people are fed by the music, some people are fed by the community. There's something about the story that we find compelling, so we keep showing up. But showing up means we're going to be annoyed and we show up anyway. We're going to disagree and we show up anyway. So when you suddenly have a pastor telling the entire congregation who they should be voting for, what political party they should belong to, there's little room to wrestle with the story now. There's like this, like, you know what I mean? It just becomes.
There's an interesting.
It becomes hijacked.
Yeah. There's an interesting scriptural quotation from the Gospel of John, in which the United Church of Christ, the UCC Church, has on their logo, and it says that they may all be one. Now, taken at face value, you might look at that without any history behind that statement, recorded, to be given by Jesus, yada, yada. And you might think, yeah, well, one, they should all be one, like the same. No, being one and in one accord, that is talking about unity. That's not talking about uniformity. And you can see this if you dig into early church documents. You can see that indeed they were of one accord, but they were not always, and they were united, but they were not always in uniformity. Their worship was a little different here than it was over there. The prayers that they said were a little bit different. The music was a little bit different, right?
Yeah.
But what they did do is the three things that I just said. They preached the gospel, they administered the sacraments, and they cared for those on the margins. And that over time, so when people says, what is the church? What makes the church different from other things? And especially pastors who are leading these churches, those are the three things that make it different, and not different like better, but different.
Yes, and pastors are allowed to speak truth to power from the pulpit. If a current leader, and every pastor has their own way of doing this, but if a current leader is doing something not just that is political, pastors are allowed, if that's their style, to say what is happening right now is wrong. They're not allowed to be partisan, and they're not allowed to say this entire party is wrong and you shouldn't be a part of it. They're not allowed to say don't vote for this person, right? Well, they are now, but from our point of view,
right.
That shouldn't, and many Christians and many religious people's point of view, that shouldn't be happening, because that's a dangerous road to go down.
Well, in this, this is a most recent example. Well, not really most recent, but more recent. I could give many other examples. But what happens when there is no separation of church and state?
Well, I think of World War II, where churches had to essentially kneel down to Hitler, just like in the Roman Empire.
Correct.
They made, hold on. Read Revelation, that's what it's all about. Domitian coming through, and these Christians, they were Jesus followers. Christianity didn't exist yet, but these communities of the anointed, right? These parties of the anointed, they had to kneel down and worship the emperor. And Revelation is John of Patmos's way of writing to his 7 churches, saying, better to die than to be loyal to the emperor over Christ. Better to die. That's what he's saying, right? Right,
and you see what happened specifically in Germany under the Nazis, the Lutheran Church, which is one of the most prominent Protestant churches in Germany. The bishops swore allegiance to the Führer, and what happened was, and promoted and supported partisan things in order to keep their status as a bishop, in order to keep their churches safe. And that's a dangerous road. You start opposing or promoting or supporting or affirming certain partisan candidates and certain parties, like the Nazi Party in Germany just a little 70, 80 years ago. That's not the business of the church.
Yeah,
and I don't mean to say the business, but that is not the work of the church.
Dillon and I have had
slippery
conversations.
slope.
Maybe this is too personal, but we're going there anyway.
I have no idea what she's going to say, by the way.
About, especially when you were in seminary, when you're a student of history, you learn that there are certain people of certain positions in society that some regimes will go after first, right? We saw it in World War II. Professors are one of them. Educators are one of them. We see a little bit of that now. When there is somebody who comes in and wants full control for whatever reason, they will go after educators. As a professor, I'm aware of that. Who else will they go after? Religious leaders. They will go after pastors. They will go after rabbis. Because when we educate people, when we serve them religiously, these are two prominent communities that shape worldviews.
Well, they're
in
blocks.
different ways.
They're voting blocks.
There you go. They're voting demographics. People look at how educated are you to decide how you're going to vote. They look at what religion you are, what denomination you are to decide how you're going to vote. They are demographics. And if you can control the leaders of those demographics, then you can control your followers.
And
that's
if you
what happens.
And if you can get their money, it's even better.
Authoritarian 101, that's what happens. So Dillon and I, especially with Dillon's job, because I'm just a professor, not just a professor.
Well, that's not true.
I don't know. I'm not the president of a college. I'm not like the leader, is what I'm saying.
You're a leader in the classroom, and you have a lot of students.
Yes, for sure. But you are the leader of, like,
a
there
community.
are people who are above you. There are
Sure.
people above you.
Okay,
You know
a
what I'm saying?
community, yes.
We've talked about with gun violence as well. Classrooms and churches, they're two prominent things, right? But we've talked about ethically, Dillon as a pastor, at what point does he walk away? And one of those, and where it's just like, I'm out. It's crossed the line for me, I'm out. And one of those lines, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, is if there is a president in our world, but if there is a political leader who requires loyalty from the church to that political leader, that's a line.
I
that has
will.
been crossed.
I won't.
I'm out.
I
Me
won't.
and my children, we are out.
I will not stand for that.
We will not pledge allegiance to a political party as a church structure.
When
as
I
part
took
of a church community.
when I took my vows as an ordained pastor in the Lutheran Church, I was called to uphold the gospel, the sacraments, and the Lutheran confessions. And those are the three things that I am vowed to uphold. And I do not or will not promote partisan candidates and political parties in the church that I serve. I will not do that. I don't think money should be going to partisan. Do I think money should be going to help food banks and housing and even programs that the government works with through, like, the disaster relief board that I'm on? Oh, absolutely. But
get a certain person in.
But I don't think a check should be sent to the Democratic National Convention or the Republican National Convention.
No.
I don't think that a check from the church should be sent to some political candidate's campaign. I think that's terrible, and
and we've seen it.
Not the work of the church.
Yeah, I don't want this to get too long, so we'll wrap it up in the next minute or two. We've seen this play out in World War II. We know what happens whenever churches are required to pledge allegiance. If you haven't read about Bonhoeffer, go for it.
Yeah.
Don't watch the movie. It's not helpful. Okay.
But as we
Anything else to add?
no, just as we always say, stay curious.
Stay curious.